Welcome back to your mat. Welcome to your Bakasana tutorial. This is Crow, and we're going to use the tools of the wall and blocks to help us get into this pose. So before you get started, you want to do a hip opening back bending practice so that your hips are really open and ready to do this pose, because if you're familiar with crow pose, your legs are really open, and so we really want, and there's a lot of external rotation in the hips, so a lot of pigeon poses, a lot of warrior series. I also like to open up my low back to make this pose a little bit more accessible. So I always like to have a couple of blocks, sometimes a meditation cushion, and the wall. So what you'll need is to pull your mat up to the wall to play with this particular pose. I put a picture of this pose up on Instagram, and I had a lot of requests for how do I get into this pose, and then you can play with, when you get stronger and get more comfortable feeling this pose in your body, slowly beginning to come away from the wall. So let's go ahead and come into Malasana, or a big yoga squat. So what will happen is sometimes our heels will be lifted in Malasana. So go ahead and just take your feet out a little bit wider and lean back. And what I like to do too, just to open my hips, is just to lean back on the wall, right? And for your students who might not want to put weight on their hands, or if you don't want to put weight on your hands, or if you have sore wrists, maybe you have a shoulder impingement, maybe you can just stay here and enjoy the shape of the pose. You can also roll up a blanket if your heels don't quite make it to the floor, and place a blanket or even a wedge underneath your heels. So you want to make sure that you're really open for this, okay? So make sure you've done a practice before you come to this, and maybe this is your big pose or your pinnacle pose or your apex pose in your practice. So then, next thing you want to do is just to lift your butt up the wall and scoot back. And whenever I think of this, I always think we're backing our butt up to the wall. And then I put my block just about underneath my forehead here, and I'm going to scoot down, bring my hands fully engaged on the mat, almost like chaturanga. I'll play with putting the block, like when I look at the block, it's just ahead of my face. Then I'm going to lean forward, put my forehead on the block, and then bring one leg up the wall, and then the other. Pressing into my knees, knees into my elbows, elbows into my knees. I'm pressing into my hands, especially the L of my hand and the outer pinky finger mound, and you can play. And then if you're feeling strong enough, pushing the floor away from you and looking forward. And then you can just take your toes down to the floor when you're ready. So I like using the block because it gives me a little stability. When I put my forehead on the block, I'm just putting it at my third eye, and I'm pushing my forehead into the block so that my neck muscles stay strong. And then you can play with, how long you stay at the wall. So for some of us, we may be able to stay up for 30 seconds, 10 seconds, maybe working our way up to a minute even. So go ahead and give that a try, and please leave some comments down below and let me know how this worked for you. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.